Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yep, I can hear you.
Yeah, I think we're live. I'm going to check to see, make sure.
Did that just? Oh yeah, I got it. The tweet went out. I see us.
Awesome. Okay, cool.
Noise.
Hello, Nick. Hello, Braden.
Hi, hello.
Hello.
Excited to be here.
Yeah. I don't see anyone in the chat yet, so I feel like we should wait until someone says hi.
Could be
Just to
waiting a long time.
just to verify that
Or at least
everything's
a few
working,
minutes. Yeah.
okay. Yeah, no worries.
Okay, cool. We got a GM Alexander.
Nice.
Hi, Jackhammer. All right, cool.
Oh, Grinza, what up?
Hey, Grinza, what's up? Okay, cool. Do you guys want to wait a few more minutes for people to join? For a minute?
Yeah.
We can do a quick round of intros if you want.
Yeah, let's do that. All right, I'll go first, if that's all right. All right.
Yeah.
So my name is Sarah. I'm on the DevRel team at Matter Labs. I live in Denver, so reach out to me if you live here and you're in crypto and you want to hang out. And yeah, I'm super excited about SSO, but I have to say I've only played around with it a bit and I haven't really gotten a chance to like really dive into everything. So I'm super excited to learn from Nick today. He is, just to spoil your intro a little bit, he's on the team that like made SSO, and so yeah, I'm really excited to like actually learn like how everything works, and yeah, it's good to be here.
Yes. I'm Braden, the Exponent Online, and I'm on the DevRel team as well. And I am here for comedic relief. No, I'm also here to learn more for the SSO, about SSO, and to ask a few of the questions that I have after going through our docs and learning a little bit more about the under workings. So super glad that we have Nick here today, and hopefully we can answer some other questions that people might have about what SSO is.
Perfect. It's a great intro, and hopefully we'll get through all your questions today. Intro about myself. My name is Nick Villanova. I am a software engineer here at Matter Labs and ZKsync. As Sarah and Braden have alluded to, I have been working on the Smart Sign-On project for a few months now. And before then, just sort of diving into DevX, DevRel, all sorts of stuff, and relatively new to the great crypto space, and experiencing my first bull run while being in the space has been fascinating, especially the last 24 hours. So good stuff. And yeah, hopefully today we'll answer a lot of questions, sort of go through, and this is a very visual project that we're working on. Its entire goal at a high level is to improve user experience, and we'll sort of walk through what that means. And I'm sure you both have questions about the project in general, and I'll be more than happy to answer questions along the way.
Yeah. Along those lines, I'm really curious, like how you characterize like what kind of developers this like Smart Sign-On is for. I guess like what kind of developers would be interested in like learning more about this.
Sure. So there are some. Let's talk about the overall, problem that we sort of saw with, I guess, Web3 and in particular Ethereum, when it comes to on-chain activity. a lot of the way people or users are, interacting on chain is through a wallet. And this is where the introduction for people to get on chain and do on chain activity is you first need a wallet. Now, this has become a big pain point, because over time we have seen that, historically what a wallet is you have this seed phrase that you create, manage, store, and keep private and never expose. And then once you have this, you then use a wallet that can integrate with an application or a DApp, and then you can do things on chain, right? You can spend your funds, you can have transactions, you can interact with on-chain activity. So along the way, there are some problems and a lot of friction points. So things like whenever you are going to an application for the first time ever, and you want to just get started and just start using the app and not have to worry about things, well, you can connect to an existing wallet. This is where the first sort of pain point sort of comes in, which is you need to, one, connect this external wallet, which is a totally different app, and to the website that you're trying to use. So that's kind of part one. This is problematic because as soon as you leave the website, that is where things start going downhill really fast. Either getting back to the website or coming back and forth becomes this dance where if you've ever tried to use a DApp where you've never signed into it before, and let's say you're using MetaMask, even though it's still a Chrome extension and it's embedded in something like your Chrome browser, the sort of on-ramping process is you then theoretically could be asked to add a new network, and then you confirm that and you go back and it's like, okay, now you're going to grant access from your account to this website. Are you sure you want to do that? Okay, click confirm. And then, oh, actually now to log in or to create an account for the first time, it's going to, you're going to sign off a transaction, right? Okay, so let me go back over, read this transaction. Like, all right, hopefully I can read this long hexadecimal and hopefully it makes sense and it's not going to take all my money. And okay, click approve, go back. Now, in this, there are a few problems, right? This going back and forth is not as easy and standardized as people think. If you ever develop a DApp and you start seeing multiple people try and use it with, 20 different wallets, you're going to see 20 different experiences. And, more than half of them are not going to work like you think they are. And you just didn't know to maybe test it with that wallet and that very specific configuration because maybe they never connected to your, ZKsync network before, right? And then there's some other pieces, which is, okay, what did you really sign? Did you really understand what you just signed by going into this application? We wanted to make sure as best we can that users are never one click away from losing all their funds. And this is sort of something that there are a lot of problems that are behind that one short statement. But that was one of the things that we like to focus on as we're going through this project. Okay, well, that's to say, maybe that's assuming all of this that I described is assuming you have a wallet, you are familiar with Web3. There's another problem here, which is what if you want to reach an audience that maybe doesn't have a wallet or doesn't want to reuse a wallet with a lot of funds and connect to your website? They don't know that you're not a shady website, right? Just like I said, right, there's a lot of paranoia around where you need to be 100% sure and confident before connecting your wallet to a website and signing off on transactions. So what if it was an experience that if you just wanted to create a new wallet and onboard from nothing, right? Not only does it help with those potentially paranoid users, but if it's a new user to Web3 entirely, what if creating an account is just a fingerprint away? And it was something that someone doesn't have to manage. It is not an additional application you have to have installed. It's not an additional Chrome extension you have to have installed. It's just embedded into sort of your application. And from a developer standpoint, so that's the user. From a developer standpoint, it should just be, 2 lines of code or such, 2-3 lines of code to add this functionality, right? If you already have a dApp. Or if you just want to make a new one, it should be just a few lines of code, and you can now have users be fully on chain, and the users have full ownership and custody of their wallets, and it is not necessarily a passphrase that they have to write down. Remember, it's a passkey. If your website is going to ask for on-chain activity, we have the ability to create sessions, and we can talk through that a little later. But the overarching goal here is it's as easy as possible and as safe as possible for people to both create applications with on-chain activity and for users to use those applications with on-chain activity. There's a lot there, and I'm going to dive in a little more, but that's kind of like a general high overview. There are some more specific goals about how we implemented this that I can go into a little later, but is there anything so far that has piqued your interest or things that stick out to you that we can dive in a little further?
I mean, for me, just the one thing that you brought up that I haven't thought about was having to manage connecting to so many wallets, and how I've had that experience so many times where I've gone to an application and it looks like you can connect any wallet, but really it's like only some of them actually work. And then it's like you have to basically make a new account anyways and manage a new seed phrase or move like your account from one wallet to another. And yeah, just like getting rid of that friction, I just feel like that's super. That sounds amazing. Yeah, because it's so annoying, and it's like, yeah, if you don't understand why, and it's like it should all work or whatever, but yeah, like it's way too much to manage. It's sort of an impossible thing to keep up with.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Braden.
Oh no, I was just going to say we ran into this with ZKsync Lite with using Wallet Connect, which is a great feature to have to use whatever wallets. You don't have to specifically look at each of the wallets, but you end up in that same issue of we'd have something that can connect to Wallet Connect but wouldn't connect to ZKsync Lite, and then it would take a bunch of resources. So I love that with SSO we are kind of tackling two things at once. One, for new users who are brand new to crypto, easily being able to set up wallets, and then also taking care of that issue of this overarching, well, the wallets of many all working differently. So I'm down to jump in.
Yeah. So that was like the first like big chunk to this. There's a second part, which is sort of more aspirational. And it's going to require a lot more work, but it is actively being completed as we speak, which is, even though you have an account, in an ideal world, we want to have also this idea that by using a standardized account framework or smart account framework like this, right, we make it as easy as possible, and we abstract out a lot of the ways that you could implement account abstraction or a smart wallet. We standardize or provide a standardized way so that anyone on a ZK chain could theoretically use this SSO wallet. What it also does is it sets us up so that we can make it as easy as possible for users to have easy interoperability between all of the Elastic chains. If you're a ZK chain in the Elastic chain ecosystem, we want to make it as easy as possible for you to, basically use funds or transact across the ecosystem, right? This is another big problem that at large Ethereum is really trying to solve in multiple different ways. And so this at least puts us on a path towards making the overall Elastic Chain ecosystem easier and more user-friendly for developers. It opens up the idea that, hey, if you create an SSO account on one of our ZK chains, partner chains, then you know that down the road this account will be able to be used across on ERA, on all the other ZK chains. So that's something else that we've kept in mind as we were building this out.
That's cool. Adds more power to the Elastic Chain.
Yes. A lot of this was coming from the mindset of just being a developer, making apps, making dApps on the ZKsync era chains, and we have as internally, like our users, our DevRel team, our DevX team, we have used our own tools, and we've really tried to push forward what can be done with a project like this. This is an internal product that we are making sure is open source, is available to everybody, but we want to make sure that throughout this process, we are also making our own tools better internally, so that the entire ecosystem improves. If we see that there are things that could be improved at a protocol layer for things like account abstraction, we ran into that as we were doing this project. And so those are byproducts of us testing out our own stuff. So, this is just another way for us to, the term is like dog fooding, right? Being able to really make sure that our native implementation of account abstraction and our use of paymasters is as easy and as straightforward as it possibly can be, so that it is just going to be easier for everyone in the ecosystem as a developer to use these features that we have. Cool. So I think the next part here is if we want to dive a little deeper into more of the technical features and the technical goals itself, this kind of gives you a mindset, hopefully, at this point of like, what is the problem set we were dealing with, and what is the general problem and path forward that we wanted to sort of go through. Does that sound good?
Let's do it. Yeah.
All right, I can share my screen real quick. And one of the things that I kind of want to bring up is we have a set of docs that have been released as part of the announcement for Smart Sign-On. And in here, we have a list of, or we go through, how to get started, what is the architectural overlay of how everything talks with each other, what are the interfaces that you can interact with, and, some FAQs, what is, how is this available, where can you play with it, that kind of stuff. So we'll start here, and I think this is probably a good step. And the first thing that I will sort of say is like a big notice. We made an announcement. This is ready to play with and test with. This is in Sepolia testnet. This is not real funds. This is something that we are actively, constantly changing, pretty much like multiple times a day, of pushing out new features, fixing bugs, listening to feedback, getting as much stuff out there as fast as possible. So as you can imagine, with this sort of rapid pace of iteration, we are not quite ready for mainnets, but we do have steps on the way to get there. So just general warning, this ain't real money, and we will be actively updating a lot of the features that you might be seeing today. But with that out of the way, the overarching goals and the overarching features should not be changing. And so I'll just kind of go through the list here because we kind of list them out. What we have is the idea that the smart contracts that we are making, or that can be implemented, remember, we have native account abstraction on ZKsync. We want to take advantage of that, but we also want to make it as easy as possible so that there is a framework for these smart wallets that we are creating. these SSO, these SSO wallets. And so what we decided upon was choosing the modular smart account approach with ERC 7579. And so this first implementation is a take in that direction, where we are going to have accounts with modules that can be added on. So 2 examples of some modules would be a passkey module, meaning, hey, you don't actually have to have a seed phrase as your signer. You can just use a fingerprint. You can use your biometrics, your YubiKey. If you wanted to. So that's what example of one module. Another module is sessions. So if you want to have sessions on your smart account, okay, well, it just you just add this module, and now you can configure sessions for a certain website. And I'll kind of go through those some examples of that. But the overall idea is you basically have let me go here. This account, right? This address that has multiple modules sort of installed and attached to it. And it leaves room for more modules to be added in the future. So those 2 that I talked about, those get added by default, right? However, it doesn't, it leaves room so that, let's say in the future, you want to add like a dead man switch, which means, hey, there's been no activity on your account for 2 years. So you added a backup, right? Another account that can then access your account after 2 years of inactivity. If you wanted to have, MFA, multi-factor authentication for some of your transactions, we can add that. You want to add some batching. You want to basically, it opens up and creates a framework for adding additional complexity to your account, and you can manage it in a relatively easy way. So
Question.
Yes.
With the modules, so comes with the right now we have the passkey module, the session module. We have on the roadmap to have the account recovery, which I'm assuming is also going to be a module.
Yes.
Okay. Then for adding future modules, do you have to redeploy a new smart account, or you can use one that didn't have this module then, and then when that future module comes out, it's easy as plug and play?
Yes, the idea is you can always add a module or you could remove a module. This is a standard part of the interface of 7579. And so
Nice.
later on, if you have an account that exists and we choose to release a module, or one day in the future, there exists a marketplace of modules that people from the community make, and you're just like, oh, that module is really cool, I'd like to add that to mine. You can do that.
Yeah,
Very
this is
cool.
super interesting. And I have a similar question, so can developers make their own custom modules? Are we putting out modules as Matter Labs, and will provide are these sort of standardized modules? How does that work?
So for right now, we, as in Matter Labs, have been making the modules, and that's sort of a 2-part here. One, we are totally open to people, contributing to the contracts that we have, and basically in here you'll sort of see how the different modules, or some of these are validator modules that can be added, and then whether or not they get added by default to a new account, sort of thing. We can have that discussion. You can definitely see that some people have started working on the 2 multi-factor validator module, where they've submitted some of the code that we are reviewing with them and sort of working through what would it look like to add multi-factor sort of auth using some of these secondary offline resources. And this sort of is going to be the place to have those discussions, or for people to submit them for right now if they want to. But overall, I would say there's a second piece to this, which is we are working, or trying to work as best we can, with other standards that currently exists, like 7579. So one of the things you'll probably note is with 7579, there is a very I would say, I'm not going to say strict, but like a very well-defined, interface for managing these modules on a smart account. However, it is built on top of the principle of 4337. And so this is something that ZKsync right now does not natively sort of support, right? However, it doesn't mean that we can't be creating modules, right? Furthermore, if we were to write the modules and they are not 4337 compatible, we could actually make them way more gas efficient. And so these are just things to consider as we're going through it. And one of our team members, Colin, who's in the chat, is pretty much can tell you a lot more about it. But the general idea is the answer is eventually, and you're correct. The module interface isn't finalized, so just be aware that you'll need to update the interface before the mainnet launch, and that's correct. Yeah. So this is all under active development, and we're honestly the best way to really know, like, is this 7579 implementation as it's defined, is this really the best way to manage these smart accounts? And honestly, the only real confident way to know is to just start making them, start upgrading them, start adding modules, and go through that experience and make sure that, okay, maybe this didn't work out exactly like how we thought, or we might have missed something in this entire process. But we are actively communicating with partners like Rhinestone and other people who are very interested in seeing 7579 become a reality.
And
That's cool.
is this,
we're gonna have Colin on next time.
yeah. And is this similar to, like, we have native account, there's native account abstraction on the ZK chains, and it's like based on 4337, but it's not the exact. Is that similar to this? Like, we couldn't use 7579 exactly because it needs 4337. So we basically had to also adjust 7579 to work with our native account abstraction.
Yeah. So
Okay.
What we were talking about before, right? When it came to, could the community contribute modules and stuff? There already is, like, Rhinestone is collecting a series of modules, right? So that deadman switch that technically exists, multi-factor, a bunch of things in here, right? Could already exist that have been built by the community. The problem is if these implementations of the modules are utilizing things that 4337 is dependent on, or is dependent on 4337, then we cannot just copy and paste the code, right?
Right.
And so we would need to make some tweaks. And that's sort of the discussion we're having right now of, like, okay, what is the best path forward for us? And it could be there are many different options here. And I think for us, we're just, okay, we'll manage some of the modules ourselves, and we'll see how this works out. And we will just get something out there to start playing with so we can be more informed about the decision that we make.
Very cool.
Cool. That's that first big point. It's a big one. But the next thing I want to talk about is passkey authentication. So no seed phrases. The idea here is we want to have an experience that is not only easy, but technically, in our opinion, more secure. Having to manage and write down a seed phrase, especially for new users, is very daunting. And we've seen time and time again that smart account implementations really can benefit from passkeys. And a lot of people have been adopting them across multiple different wallets. So this is no exception. We have added it as a module, so users don't have to worry about it. The actual passkey itself is something that we can walk through here in a second after I go through the rest of these features about where the data is stored. What are some examples of, like, what this looks like in the long term of managing your passkeys, and but I would say in general a lot of the ecosystem is very much pro passkey kind of stuff. So we want to make that as easy to use for our developers and their users as possible. The next thing are sessions. So we want, the idea is, as a developer, you want users to come to your website and be able to interact with things on chain, like transactions, but we don't want them to have to sign with their fingerprint every single time that they are doing something on chain. So this is very good for things with microtransactions or like games or even AI agents, where the idea is to use an app. You just kind of say at the beginning, whenever you're logging in, oh, I want to make a session and I want to authorize this sort of website to have access to, I don't know, $10 of funds in fees. I wanted to only be able to call this, this, and this, and then, you know, sign off on it. Now, as a user, you don't want to know, or you don't want to have to keep track of all the things that, you know, this app is going to, you know, have to make calls to, or, you know, what it's going to have to spend. So as a developer, whenever you are connecting with SSO and you're setting this up, you can actually provide the end user who's logging in and say, look, you should actually only ever need to spend this amount of money. You're only going to have to basically make calls to this function, this function, this function, this function. So whenever you go into the application itself and the session's been created, you know that you're only ever going to be at risk of spending a certain amount of money. You're not going to be just one click away from losing everything. It is going to then also open up that user experience benefit of, now all these transactions don't require a fingerprint every single time. It is just going to reuse that session until that session is complete. Every session has an expiry date, meaning let's say you set it 24 hours. So a session is only good for 24 hours, or maybe it's like a bank where it's like 15 minutes, right? And so it's totally up to you as the developer to configure this for your users. But the idea here is make it as easy as possible to do things on chain, have activity on chain without constantly getting pulled out of the experience and being asked to sign transactions.
Okay, I have a
Oh,
question
nice.
about this.
Yes.
This is super cool. I think it's like amazing for UX and stuff, but I'm so curious like how this module works. If we can get a little technical here, like what
Sure.
is this? How does this actually keep track of like how much you spend over a certain amount of time, and like yeah. How can I trust this? I guess is what I'm saying. Is it all on chain?
It is all on chain. And I'm going to pull up the validator here. So we have this validator. It's under our contracts. It's source validator, session key validator. So this is the module.
Do you mind zooming in a little bit?
Yes, ma'am. How's that look?
Thanks. What do you think, Brayden? Maybe a little more?
It works for me. I mean,
Okay,
I have a bigger screen, so I want huge.
Okay, I have a little screen. That's good. Okay.
So all of the session configuration is definitely going to be on chain. And before I go into this, I want to show you sort of an example of what this would look like. So let me pull up the docs for the SDK. Let's do this one. Okay. So whenever you are connecting in the JavaScript SDK, you're just going to call this, you're going to make a new WAGME connector, right? ZKsync SSO connector. Now, as you are creating this connector, you have the option to create a bunch of optional settings for, let's say, sessions or some other metadata, right? So for sessions in particular, if you want your application, your dApp, to have sessions for the user, and whenever they log in, you will need to set a few things, right? So here's the session metadata. You will tell it, hey, this expiry, this session is only good for, this time slot. So it's only good for one day from whenever they, decide to agree, and, you accept the fingerprint. Okay, this session is only good for one day. Then there's also a fee limit, which means how much are you allowed to spend in gas fees, right, from your account. Then you start going into at this point, a session is pretty much locked down, right? You need to give it permissions and access to make calls or to make transfers. So, for example, if you know that your session is going to, or your app needs to make transfers, then you could say, hey, I want to make sure that this session allows transfers for a total value limit of 0.1 ETH to a very specific address, or for, token, or sorry, no, address. And similarly, for all of the calls that your app is going to be making, you could be saying like, oh, well, actually, I need to make sure that I can call this transfer function. I need to be able to make sure that this session has access to call transfer for this token at this address. Here's the ABI. This is just so we, make it easier for users as they're using JavaScript or TypeScript. But in your parameters to the transfer function, because there are two of them, we want to make sure that we only allow transfers to a very specific address, right? Like if you're using a session, we want to make sure that as you are not going to be scammed and potentially be sending your ERC20 tokens to some random address. Like, nope, it is defined here. This is what you are approving. Then, how basically many tokens are you allowing to be spent? And so this is where we can set limits on or comparisons also, basically on the amount of tokens per hour, or for this specific parameter, what that looks like is you basically say, 0.2 for these token desk for this token amount, and for the next hour. So this is allowing up to 0.2 tokens per hour until the entire session expires, which is, as you remember, defined up here as 24 hours. So 1 day. This is pretty thorough example of like an example of what this configuration could look like. Keeping that in mind, right? This is all the metadata about a session, right? You can pass this in as a developer, and you'll sort of see what this looks like in a little bit visually for the end user. But when it comes to the actual contracts themselves, inside of this module, you will see a few things. So inside of here, we have, we have a reference to this session library. So I'm going to pull this up real quick. This is where we have put a lot of logic regarding sessions. So you will see things like all this logic is all 100% on chain. Right, so you are defining 100% on chain what is going to happen when, what is allowed and what is not allowed. Right? Are you making calls to this? Are you going over this limit? Is the value that you're passing to this particular function less than, greater than, equal to this specific value? Are you allowing transfers? What is your expiry date? What is the status of, right? For example, of this session. Just because a session is active doesn't mean we give you the ability to deactivate right a session, to stop it, just in case you realize, oh, I did not mean to make that session, or you are concerned that just leaving a session open because someone might set an expiry date of like a full week, and you're like, oh, my account might be compromised, let me delete the session, right? So we allow for that to happen. But at a high level, those values that you saw in the configuration get stored here on chain. This is the session storage. So along with the status, the fees that it's tracking, the transfers, the calls, the additional parameters that you'll need, all of this is going to be defined fully on chain. And whenever it comes to the actual validate function, this is where we are going to be going through and looking at all of the, call policies, right? Verifying that this transaction you are trying to execute, or is trying to be executed on your behalf, is falling within that call policy, meaning you have allowed it to make this call. If it's not allowed, it's not going to move forward. It's just going to revert, right? Call to this contract is not allowed, stuff like this, or value exceeded its limit, stuff like that. But this is where I'm not going to dive too much more because I could go on for a long time. There's a lot of logic here. Feel free to dive in. But this is where, between these two files, the module itself, and then we took a lot of the logic and put it into a library just so this file is not like 1,000 lines. But being able to create a new session, being able to disable sessions, all this kind of stuff is easily, well, it is available to dive deeper. And I leave that as an exercise for the reader. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that does. That's really cool. I'm definitely going to do that. Yeah.
Quick question on the module there. So that you had as the example. So you have transfers and then you have the calls. So then basically you can say you're allowed to transfer X amount to address A, and you're also allowed to make these calls to contract B with these limits as well. So you can like kind of like on top of the transfers the transfers and the calls can have separate like kind of sessions going on in the same session module that you set.
Yes.
Nice. Dang, that's cool.
And can a user have multiple sessions? Like if they make a session in my app, like does another app have to worry about, like they have an active session?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
So if let's say there's two different apps that both have SSO integrated and they both like want to create different sessions that have different rules and stuff, can I have two active sessions?
Yeah, most definitely.
Okay.
And then we'll go into this a little later, but we have a whole like auth server PC UI to manager sessions.
Nice.
That's external to any specific application. Cool. I'm going to zoom on a little further just because I know I don't want to go over too much time today, but I mean, I'll talk about this for hours. So integrated paymaster support. Yeah, we wanted to make it as easy as possible for people to basically pay or cover the charges for this, right? So the way that this works, and this is important because the next natural question comes up of like, who's paying for all this, right? Like you're creating sessions, you are creating accounts, and so who has to pay? And no matter who's paying, we want to make sure that it's always available via Paymaster, right? So the way that this works is at a high level, there are three parts to ZKsync Smart Sign-On SSO. There's the application, which is what the developer makes, right? And they are just going to run npm install for ZKsync SSO, which is this command, right? Here's the npm package if you want to get started. So on their front end, right, they add that package. They add this connector, like what you just saw here. Maybe they add a session, but the first thing that's going to happen is you want a user to create an account. So this is where the second piece in all this comes in, which is the auth server. The auth server is a fully open source, just static web page. You can find this in our code if you go to the ZKsync SSO repo, and inside of here, you will see these three components that I'm going to be talking through. This is the JavaScript SDK. This is the auth server, and it's just a static web page. And then there's smart contracts. We'll talk about that in a little bit. We've already talked about some of them. But this auth server, this is here so that whenever someone is trying to log in or create an account with passkeys, or they're trying to have a session being created, and they have a website that will tell them what this session actually looks like visually. They will have a web page and a visual experience to tell them and show them, what this account being created is actually doing, or what this transaction that they're signing is actually doing. There is a second part to this when it comes to passkeys that a lot of people don't talk about. For those who are unaware, a passkey in the Web Authn standard is reliant upon the idea is like you use biometrics like Face ID or fingerprint scans, right? Whether it be a MacBook or your Pixel phone, whatever. The idea is a website will request a new passkey being created for you, right? And you could have it totally stored on your phone. That's fine. The problem is that, or the feature is that a passkey is only valid for a specific URL, a domain, HTTPS domain to be very specific. It needs to have a valid cert. So whenever a passkey gets created, we needed to have a more centralized location for people to have the passkey tied to. Why is this important? Well, it's so that people could log in and reuse the SSO account on multiple different applications. So you could use it for Pancake Swap. You could use it for your random app. You could reuse the SSO account on a whole bunch of different apps. And it's going to work on the same principle as OAuth 2.0 for those in the Web 2 world who are familiar, where the idea of having sort of this, it's not really a relying party trust server, but it's sort of similar in nature. It's the auth server piece, which is, it is here as sort of this central mechanism so that whenever you are requesting access to either create an account or to authorize access to your account, it is going to a singular place. So with the example of something like Google sign-on, right? The SSO flow for that is, let's say you go to a website like Figma, right? And you want to log in with your Google account. It's going to, whenever you click that Google icon button to log in, it's going to open up the Google pop-up, right? And it's going to say, hey, do you authorize this application to have access to your Google account? And what do you give it access to? Only your email address? Or are you also giving it access to, for some godforsaken reason, edit your calendar to access Figma? I don't know, whatever. But all of that happens on this other website, right? And that is what this auth server is also doing in this process. So whenever you are saving and creating this passkey, it is being tied to the domain of auth-test.zksync.dev for Zapolia. And that's a lot of what it's doing here. So whenever a user, clicks connect to create an account, they then get sent down here and it goes to their phone, right? And it shows up a little pop-up of, oh, the auth server, auth-test.zksync.dev. It is asking to create an account, and it is going to request a new passkey gets created with your fingerprint. It's like, oh, cool. Yep, sounds good to me. I'm going to give it my fingerprint. And what it's going to do is on your, let's say I use my phone. On your phone, it is going to store that passkey locally and encrypt it. What is going to happen is that passkey does not leave your phone. Instead, what leaves your phone is the public data about your passkey. The public key, the credential ID, these are two pieces of information that we then get back to the auth server. The auth server is going to go through and deploy the account for you. This is where the third piece in all this comes in, which are the smart contracts. So ultimately, we are going to be making an account on chain, a smart account. So this is when it happens. We call deploy account with this public information, right, about the passkey that you just created. And then it maps it out. It adds those two modules that we were talking about for passkeys and for sessions. It's like, all right, cool. You got an account created. It's going to return the address and ultimately go through the auth server again. At this point, the auth server is done. It's like, oh, all right, I took care of everything for you. Similar to the Google, OAuth 2.0 single sign-on of, okay, you gave it access or you created a new Google account. It's going to kick you back to the website, but now it kicks you back with the address to your account. So to the application and to the SDK, to the developer and to the developer, right? All they have to do is use this SDK, and we take care of everything else for them. To the user, all they see is, oh, they go to this application and a pop-up to the auth server comes up. They give it a fingerprint, and cool. Then we're good to go. They get kicked back to the website, and they have an account and they're logged in. So the question is, who pays for all this? Who's paying for this account to be created? Well, all of this is put behind paymasters and it's abstracted away. So for right now, for the first 1 million accounts, Matter Labs is paying for funding a paymaster to pay for the deployment of the accounts. When it comes to creating sessions, it's just as easy to, in this configuration over here, you can give us an address to a paymaster. You just send us the address to the paymaster and we'll start using it to create sessions or to pay for your users, right? One thing we've seen from developers is it's kind of complicated sometimes for people to use paymasters and to integrate it into their current contracts and their current flow. So as part of this, one of the things that we've done in a demo that I'll walk everyone through here in a little bit is we have made it as easy as possible to, we have given an example of what a paymaster looks like. I mean, we have many examples in our docs, but we have provided a simple paymaster for minting an NFT for their users. And then actually using this is also provided as an example whenever we go to our stores, the connector. I forget where this is added. I will look this up a little later, but it is just like one line in the piece of actually calling the functions of just adding a paymaster, and we try and abstract as much of this for end users as we can. So the idea here is if you want to start using SSO, that's great. If you also want to start using SSO and paymasters, we should also make that easy as possible, because what we're trying to do again is just provide the best user experience and provide the best developer experience. And if all you had to do to use a paymaster was, hey, copy and paste our paymaster example, change a few things, and then just give us the address in one extra parameter of, a function, then that's it, right? That should be as easy as possible in our minds anyways.
And maybe we'll get into this, or maybe more people have to dive into docs, but like with the paymaster, is that like kind of hard coding a paymaster to follow you around everywhere? Like if I was on PancakeSwap and I did a swap, and then I went to Uniswap and I did a swap, is that like saying instead of it having to be integrated with Uniswap or with PancakeSwap, it's like, oh, my account is sending through and like automatically getting validated to use the paymaster?
Not necessarily. So when we talk about the paymaster, so going back to this like diagram, right? There are 3 places where a user could get charged money, right? Or where things cost, right? Transactions cost. One is deploying the account. And I talked about that where like we have added a paymaster to the auth server or really to these contracts. And it is going to, fund for now the deployment of the contracts. If there is something that the user is doing, like let's say purchasing, some tokens, right? Or doing moving inside of a game and that requires a transaction, whatever the case may be, that is either the user paying for it or the application developer sponsoring that, right? Via paymaster. Mm-hmm. The final part here, that the third thing is whenever a session gets created, who is paying for that session to get created, right? Because it's not free. It's like less than a penny. It's like 0.001 cents or something. I don't know. But someone's got to pay for it, right? Especially if for some reason you set the expire date to like 15 minutes or something, right? So what you can do is we made it as easy as possible that you just give us a paymaster address and inside of the SDK, and you can sponsor it as the developer. This is not that much, cost, but it would be really good if someone is going to your website and they're creating a new account that maybe, the first session or like first 5 sessions, right? You cover the cost for something like that.
Okay.
So we made it as easy as possible to be able to do something like that. So those are the 3 like places where people actually have to pay for money and where it's coming from.
And you said you can give us the paymaster address, but I'm assuming you just mean like inputting it into your deployment, not like having to physically reach out to Matter Labs and say, "Hey, here's my paymaster."
Correct. It is
Okay.
literally it's somewhere in the code in the example, but
Oh, that's right. Okay.
you just add it as part of like the what should we call it? It's just another parameter whenever you're creating a session. Let's
Okay.
put that.
Cool.
Okay. Zooming on through because I do want to get to the demo. Account recovery. This is coming soon. This is another module that we would like to add. There are different ways of doing account recovery. We can add multiple guardians and then have something like a ZK email or a ZK TLS proof that basically would have an off-chain sort of resource validating and giving you temporary access back to your account if anything were to go wrong, right? And maybe during the account creation process, we give you the option and we strongly recommend like, hey, make sure you have a backup or like an email address that you have assigned as like a backup guardian, and just say like after X days of inactivity, this other account could have access, right? That kind of stuff. Still being thought out, but it's on our roadmap. SDKs. I've talked about the JavaScript SDK that has been released, but we are actively working on an iOS and Android SDK, just so the exposure and ease of using something like SSO and integrating it into your app is, hopefully it's simple and as easy as possible. Open source auth server. So these components that I talked about, as we were creating an account, right? The application, the auth server, the actual, blockchain itself. The auth server is something that we very specifically did 2 things with. One, we made it a static web page. It does not have an API. It does not have a Postgres database. Like none of that. It is just a static web page. And the other thing that we did is we made it 100% open source. There are the main reason I would say we did this, and I'm choosing my words carefully because I respect all projects that are really trying to tackle this UX problem, right? Is there are other products that exist that definitely are doing something very similar to this. The problem is when you are getting to this auth server piece, it is a full website and it is something that is entirely out of your control. And it is making API calls. It has a database. It is storing things, right? And you are just trusting that it is storing the right things. And the people behind that website do not maliciously, or I'm not saying maliciously, but that information doesn't get released somehow, right? And so what we wanted to make sure is that one, this is open source. Anyone could dive deeper into this, make changes to the auth server. And then 2, it's a static web page. Like you can see all the data that's being stored. It's all on your local storage. It's all on your phone, or whatever device you're accessing on a browser, right? To this. Everything else is stored on chain. So it is everything out there in the plain open. You can very clearly trace where the information is going, what we are accessing, and verify yourself if you wanted to really make sure that these are your keys, and that includes the session keys. So just something we wanted to call out.
I have
Uh,
a quick question about the auth server is like is to me, my understanding is like somebody has to host this and be paying for the hosting of this website. So if Matter Labs disappeared tomorrow, and the payment for that server goes away, is there any like backup with the having it open source that somebody can easily like put that back up and all the accounts can be usable again, or is that something that needs to be thought about?
we're thinking it through, and the reason it becomes slightly um, problematic is, remember how I had said passkeys are locked down to a specific URL, a specific domain, and that cert needs to be valid. So if for some reason the auth server went away, you could, in theory, stand up a new website. You would just need to make sure it's at the exact same domain name, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the immediate, like if we needed to recover kind of thing. However, I will say the smart contracts that we've built, and feel free to dig through them, they are built in such a way that we support multiple domains with multiple passkeys. So in the future, we are working towards this idea of exploring what it would look like for you to have a single SSO account with multiple auth servers. It is not something we are immediately tackling because we are more interested in solving other problems at the moment, but this is definitely something on our radar.
Cool. That's very nice. Wow, we have
And
big
then,
brains.
we try. What can I say? The last part of this is we wanted to provide examples. We really hated if you like whenever you see launches or announcements that, hey, there's this thing, here's this SDK, go try it out. And I'm just like, what the fuck? These docs only get me so far. Sorry for my language. But like, I want like what developers, what I want as a developer, I'm speaking for myself, but I want something I can copy paste and just get started and tweaking, right? I want something that I know will work, and then I can add to it and get it to work for me. And I want a diving off point. So as part of that, we did a few things, which is in the repo for SSO. You will see a whole folder for examples, which I kind of highlighted a little bit. But you will see a few examples in here if you wanted to look at it yourself. The most simple is the one we have for our CI, which is just called demo app. And every piece of logic is pretty much embedded directly into a single view file that is only like 175 lines long, which also includes all the HTML and CSS. So it's not as big as you think. But if you want to see what the bare bones approach to just adding stuff in here, or using SSO, this could be a starting point. Furthermore, we have added a section in the docs for getting started where we walk you through, right, what all these different configurations and how to add things. The other piece to this was publishing a website, which I might have accidentally clicked on a few times as we're going through this. And that is the nft.zksync.dev demo. What this was is we wanted, with the announcement, something that users could interact with and play with, right? Anytime you make a product like this, we want to make sure users can just quickly experience it for themselves. So what we're going to do, or what you'll see here, is an application that is built to walk you through smart sign-on and sessions and allow you to mint an NFT and share that NFT or mint it for another friend. Along the way, you are going to pay nothing. You are going to create a new account from scratch, and you're just going to be, a fingerprint away from doing all this. So I'm going to get started and sort of walk you through and talk basically of what I am seeing here on my screen. The idea of always having a button that says connect your wallet or something like that. I hate that. I really hate that that has become a developer experience like standard for Web3 apps. It should just be like, okay, log in, right? Or let's go. So we're just like, all right, look, you don't see a wallet connect button. It's just let's go because it's embedded into your application. So from here, this is the auth server that we were talking about. This is the pop-up that comes up. You'll see auth-test.zksync.dev. From here, it's going to ask you, oh, would you like to log into an existing account or sign up? I'm going to create a new one and sign up. So from here, what it's going to do is tell you, oh, actually, this website has a session. So would you like to grant this website access to your session? In terms of spending fees, 0.001 ETH, it's a little under $4 is the time of this recording. That hopefully goes up by tomorrow. And you can also see like, oh, it's actually also going to have access to a few other things. We're working on the screen, but this is going to tell you, oh, this is making a session for you. So I'm going to click connect. Hopefully you can see this. Yep, you can see this. All it's going to ask for is a fingerprint, right? So it has a timestamp on here so I can manage having multiple passkeys in case I want to make multiple accounts. It's easier to check. Now, all I did was give a fingerprint, and I did 2 clicks before that. So, or 3 clicks technically, because I clicked like, let's go. You'll see an account has been created. It exists. It's real. And now I want to mint. So then I just click on the mint, and you'll notice I didn't do anything. That's because the session was created. It was using that session. It's reusing that fingerprint that I had given before, right? And just like that, you have on-chain activity. So nice. This account is real. You have minted an NFT. Furthermore, if you give me someone else's wallet address, I can mint and send this to a friend. So I am going to, let's see, someone else in the chat want to post their wallet address and I can just mint them. Yeah, don't worry. Just not the private key, just the public.
Trust me, bro. I have.
Yeah, post yours, Braden.
There you go.
Perfect. Everyone make sure to keep this in their history forever.
So my test one.
Yeah, so mint and send to a friend, right? We have that session. Well, guess what? I just minted and sent, or minted for another user and transferred, all with just a click of a button. I did not get asked for my fingerprint. I did not get asked for a confirmation because whenever you created that session at the beginning, you approved for this session to mint things for you. And you also notice, like, I created a new account. It didn't have any funds. It was totally empty. But it was still able to do this. And that's also the power of Paymasters. I got started.
I see on the Block Explorer that I have got it.
Oh, yes. There you go.
It's real. Well, Unreal on testnet.
Nice.
Yeah, Zeke NFT Quest. You'll see it here. Look at that. Look at all those mints. So, right, I've gone through this experience. I have, checked out this app. That's cool. One other thing you might not know is now that you're logged in, right, you can actually go directly to the auth server. So here's that auth-test that you were saying before. If I refresh this page, you will see, oh, you've actually logged in to this account, right? And you can see things like your sessions. Here is that session that was just created that we're using. And so you can see, right, was it 5:35? So it had an expiry date of 24 hours, which kind of matches up with what you saw before. It was created about 3 minutes ago. There's that limit that you had set. And let's say, I don't want anyone to use the session. Like, let's say it got, compromised for some reason, right? So I'm just like going to remove it. You'll see I'm going to go in here, and this is a transaction online, and revoke, and boom, there you go.
So that right now is covered, like with the setup that we have here, that's covered by a paymaster as well.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
The idea is, at least for now, we're going to cover the costs. Probably what it's going to be like is if you want to revoke like maybe 5 sessions, we'll cover that. If you want to revoke more than that, then you're going to have to start paying for it yourself. That kind of
Okay.
thing.
And
Go ahead.
the revoke, so that revoke is sending a transaction to the session key validator contract and then changing that status from activated to closed. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Cool.
Look at that. You're a
Very
smart
cool.
contract developer on SSO already. Come join the team, my friend.
Growing every day.
Oh, yes.
I have another question. Sorry, I just like this is super cool. But I'm wondering about the time for the session. It's like we have a timestamp, but is that in off-chain time or is that in block time? Like if we say 1 day, are we estimating and hoping that that block actually land? I guess we have more deterministic block times, but you know, yeah, is it based on the block time or is it based off of time?
Block timestamp. So it's
Okay.
going to be taking, let's say you say 1 day, right, is your configuration. It's going to take the string 1 day, convert it into a number of seconds. And that's just going to send that over and be like, okay, it's going to be this amount of seconds in the future.
Okay. Cool. Dang. So
And
then there's a limit. Good.
I was going to say, as you alluded to, on Eero, we mine a block roughly every second. So
Yeah. So then and this would be crazy to have like a session that would need to be a second or under, but that's really the limit would be like, yeah, you couldn't make a session for less than 1 second.
yeah, that would be totally useless. I mean, at that point, like you don't have to use sessions. So that was something we've been talking a lot about sessions, and like, you know, it's great, you know, if you have a bunch of transactions. But what if, you know, it's just like a website that you only want to do 1 transaction a day kind of thing, right? Like you don't need a session for that. You don't have to have sessions. It's totally optional. What it's going to do then is ask you for your fingerprint or ask the user for their fingerprint, you know, every time they try and, you know, do something on chain, at least in terms of like a writing data on chain, right?
Cool.
That's so cool.
Okay. I want to make sure I went through everything here. Let's see. We went through the overall features and goals. I showed off the amazing demo, which you can try yourself at nft.zksync.dev. We have the docs that are available. We have these amateur architecture diagrams, data flows. I haven't gone through the session data, but it is available in our docs if you kind of want to just walk through this a little more. Very similar sort of explanation or flow of what I kind of walked through of, you know, what data is being stored where, right? You create this session, who has the private key for that session, right? Because the session is a totally different treated like a new EOA with like very like guardrails, right? And so that's what a session is. So who has the key to that session? And it's like, oh, okay, the application, but you know, where does all the configuration, what does it look like when it's stored on chain, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I talked about modular accounts a little overall. I'm sure there are many questions. Is there anything else that in the features and goals that pique your interest?
I just have a question about if someone has a like suggestion for features or just feedback in general, where should they go? And is there like a place they can go for that?
Yes. So we are actively looking at the issues repo, or so the ZKsync SSO GitHub repo. This is one place where if you find issues, post it here and we will take a look. We are actively trying to get through a lot of bugs or enhancements that we are discovering along the way. And this is one place that we will look at. The other place is our amazing GitHub discussions. So, for those who are unaware, for ZKsync, we have a ZKsync developers GitHub discussions. This is a great place for anyone to ask questions, to have follow-up, to we have a dedicated resource in the company at all times who is actively monitoring and giving feedback to these issues. This is something that we've really tried to improve on and take very seriously, of making resources at the company available to any developer who's stuck or has questions. And so at a higher level, if there is something, a more general question, maybe not something specific to SSO, but maybe it might be, maybe it not be, and you're wondering, where's a better place to get that sort of direct feedback, the GitHub discussions is probably where you want to go.
Awesome. Thanks. Cool. Well, I think we should probably wrap it up then. Like, I know you're saying there's probably a bunch of questions people have. Feel free to leave them on the GitHub discussions, but otherwise, we're definitely going to have to do another follow-up with someone else on the team. And yeah, or maybe you again if you want. And yeah, just dive into this more. And I feel like this is just an introduction. So we're going to be putting out like way more resources and stuff for SSO in the coming months.
Yeah, and like you said, this is the initial announcement, the alpha phase to a lot of this. We wanted to get to a point where it was ready for people to start testing, playing around with, downloading the npm package, trying to use it yourself, and just kick the tires, test out the features, give us feedback. We want to hear that feedback, and if you have any issues, and along the lines, like I said at the beginning, this is very alpha phase. We are making active development changes every single day. So fully expect to continue to hear from us as we push out new features. We push out some of the things on this roadmap that we are, working to add through, and just really cool examples of how SSO makes applications just significantly easier for users and for developers. So just continue to expect more active engagement and just content throughout the coming months.
And the quick question, there's the person who had talked about, they wrote in a question about they implemented SSO, it got an error. And so you just talked about where they options they could go. Do you think it's better for them to go to open up an issue on the SSO repo or go to the GitHub discussions?
Let's say for now, GitHub discussions.
Okay.
I
cool.
think just because I want to make sure that they can see and get direct feedback as much as possible. Start there, and if it becomes a true bug or something that needs to be fixed, we'll create an issue from that.
Okay. GitHub discussion page.
Yeah, don't be surprised if you create a GitHub discussion and then you get asked to, or we'll help move the conversation over to the other repo.
Okay.
If it's like a feature request or something, right? As an example.
Yeah. All right. Put that in the chat. All right. Well, this is awesome. I'm super excited to see what more comes with this, and also just actually changing the game for how both devs and users interact with blockchain. It's just so much easier. This is so much more of that Venmo, Cash App, Apple Pay moment for people than where we've been kind of in the dark for a while of let me click 100 times to do one thing.
Yeah.
So.
And trust me, there are ways to make this even better than what you see today.
Ooh.
That's awesome.
For next time.
Sweet.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Nick, for the awesome presentation. And Yeah, I'll see everyone next time.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.